What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for June 10th, 2022. I'm Graham G. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. No SmackDown audio review last week. I was busy, didn't have a chance to catch SmackDown until later on in the weekend. Worked out for the better because the show sucked, and this show was a lot better. This was probably, if not, I would really have to think about it, but there's not much competition. This might be the best episode of SmackDown so far this year, which I know we're only halfway through the year and whatnot, and that's not really saying a hell of a whole lot considering SmackDown has sucked for majority of 2022 so far, really dating back to the draft in October, and I've gone on and on and on about this before. SmackDown is not a good show right now. Objectively, not a good show. The roster's depleted, there's no top championship to fight for, the Intercontinental Championship has largely been an afterthought on the Blue brand, the women's division's a mess, the tag team division is nearly non-existent, not a lot of exciting storylines right now, a lot of redundant rematches and just boring feuds and stuff like that. That being said, as I said a moment ago, SmackDown was very good on Friday. I was shocked. It was a very good show. They took the less is more approach, granted, which also meant featuring a fucking ton of filler video packages and replays and stuff like that. They pulled the old card where Sami Zayn came out for the main event at 9:25 Eastern Time PM, and the match didn't start between him and Sami Zayn until almost well after 9:40. So he was almost in the ring for like 20 fucking minutes before the match finally started. But it was a really good match, and I can't complain. They had a really good match to open the show. We had two people named for the men's and women's, or actually not men's, but I'll get to that in a moment. But we did have two Money in the Bank qualifiers on this show. We had a new Intercontinental Champion crowned, and a match made for next week. Actually, two matches announced for next week, one of which I couldn't give two fucks about, but the other one is very exciting. So we'll get into all that right now here in my Friday Night SmackDown audio review. My written review is also available right now over on WrestleRant.com if you want to check that out as well. But we started the show with a Money in the Bank qualifier match for the men. Drew McIntyre taking on a very familiar foe in Sheamus here. The typical quality contest between these two. Great stuff. They've had many matches over the last year dating back to their initial feud over on the Raw brand in early 2021. But I can't complain because they work so well together. And this was a nice break from the New Day McIntyre versus Brawling Brutes bullshit that I really just could not give two fucks about. Butch was at ringside for Sheamus. So part of me thought we might have Butch interfere, cost Drew the win, and we get McIntyre and Butch out of this, which would be great. Pete Dunne, whatever. Obviously it is Pete Dunne, but we got to call him Butch because that's what WWE calls him. Can't get confusing here. So we almost got Butch and McIntyre out of this, and we still might. Although instead of having Sheamus win via interference, it ended in a double disqualification. So I really enjoyed the match. Some great hard-hitting offense here from both men. I fucking hated the finish. I thought that was lame, typical WWE finish here where both men use chairs on one another and both men get disqualified. So as of now, neither man is in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. There might be a rematch, there might not be. I thought they might announce a rematch for next week, like a no disqualification rematch between the two, which we actually saw at Fastlane last year, if I'm not mistaken. That was their first no-holds-barred street fight, whatever you want to call it, between McIntyre and Sheamus, and it was a great match. I thought we might saw something, and we still might, but I thought they might announce something similar for next week's show to determine who will enter the men's Money in the Bank ladder match between these two men. They did confront Adam Pearce later on the show, but nothing was made official, so as of right now, that's not happening. But neither man really needs to be in the ladder match. Sheamus has won the briefcase before. I like Sheamus a lot. I would actually not mind seeing him back in the world title picture. But the funny thing is that he actually won the briefcase, believe it or not, 7 years ago. Not almost a decade ago, but closer to a decade ago than like 5 or 6 years ago. So that's a long time. He actually cashed in the briefcase later on in 2015 on Roman Reigns to win the WWE Championship. And that was the last world title reign this man had in that company. And prior to that, he was only champion for a month. Prior to that, you would have to go back to 2012 when he was the world heavyweight champion. That's a fucking decade ago. I don't get the feeling Sheamus will be a world champion again in WWE. And that's a shame because he's actually done some of his best work of his entire WWE career in the ring in the last year. But anyway, I don't want to see him win the briefcase. Drew has never been Mr. Money in the Bank. He does not need to be Mr. Money in the Bank. He already called the shot a week ago at Roman Reigns. Unless Roman Reigns said no, and I get the feeling we're getting that match regardless, unless there was some sort of a storyline where Roman came on the show and said, no, I'm not facing you at Clash at the Castle, and Drew would have to win Money in the Bank to get there, there's no reason for McIntyre to be Mr. Money in the Bank. Now, they probably had their plans thrown into disarray just because Cody Rhodes got hurt, and I assumed he was the one to win the briefcase this year for the men. So, assuming that's not happening, and it won't, they actually said on the show that Cody Rhodes is going to be out for 9 months. And that's the WWE narrative. He might be back in 6. I don't think he'd be back quicker than that, but I'd be shocked if he wasn't in the Rumble, winning the Rumble. Unless there's complications with the road to recovery for him, for the, and getting back and, getting the fucking, the torn pec back in good shape and whatever, and the rehabilitation process. I'd be shocked if he wasn't back in time for the Rumble. So, anyway, Cody Rhodes probably would have won the briefcase. I've said this before, win the briefcase, announce the cash-in ahead of time for SummerSlam or whenever, and he wins on, he beats Roman Reigns for the championship. But that's obviously not going to happen. You could still get that with the Rumble, but it's not happening with the Money in the Bank briefcase. Either way, Sheamus and McIntyre don't need to win the briefcase. I'd be fine with either one of them being in the match. If you want to get them on the show, as long as they don't win the briefcase, I'm okay with that. But we'll see what they have planned for next week. I did think the match was great. Didn't love the finish, but this was a very good match. We had a second Money in the Bank qualifier match right after that, this one being for the women. Lacey Evans and her first taste of in-ring action in WWE on TV since I think January or February of last year because she got pregnant. And she's been good to go for a while now. We started first seeing those vignettes for her return like back in April. They aired those to quickly recap the Lacey Evans saga so far, but they had her originally resurface in vignette form back in April. They announced her return at that point. On SmackDown, they ran like 5 or 6 straight vignettes of her, talking about her backstory, building sympathy for a new babyface Lacey Evans character. She came out for one appearance in front of the crowd. That was like in late April, early May, okay? She disappears, shows up on Raw a week or two later, again in vignette form. They say she's coming to Raw. She makes an appearance, cuts a promo, I think, on Raw, or at least showed up, made an appearance similar as she did on SmackDown. The idea, it seemed like that she'd be turning heel, which was fucking dumb, and that still might be the plan. And then she disappeared. They actually advertised her debut match for Raw the following week. It didn't happen. And then we come to find out she was moved back to SmackDown in the last week and a half, and now she's back to being a babyface on SmackDown, and here we are. This company is so fucking disorganized. I mean, how does something like that even happen? And you can't blame, Sasha and Naomi walked out. They need a new babyface on SmackDown. She was on SmackDown to begin with. Raw did not need Lacey Evans. Raw has enough women. The SmackDown women's division needs more fresh blood, needs more fresh faces. Not that Lacey Evans is exactly a fresh face. I mean, she's been around for 3 years on the main roster. But they do need more babyfaces. She should have never been on Raw. And she shouldn't be a heel right now. I think that'd be dumb with her current character and all the sympathy they've built up for her. All the sympathy they've built up for her, I think it'd be dumb to just turn around and turn her heel. I think that'd be pretty fucking stupid personally, but anyway. She faced Xia Li here, another woman that we barely get to see on SmackDown. She made all of, one appearance, had all of 1 or 2 matches on SmackDown. This was like her second or third match on SmackDown. She was in the Six-Pack Challenge last week to determine the number 1 contender to the SmackDown Women's Championship. She lost that, obviously. And she was in this qualifier for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, losing again. They turned her heel, as I mentioned, which was fucking dumb. And here we are. So, the match was really nothing of note. It lasted all of like 2 or 3 minutes. It really wasn't about the match, although it was fine while it lasted. It was more about getting Lacey Evans in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, when RJ and I discussed on Thursday's WrestleRant Radio who are the top frontrunners to win the briefcase, we mentioned Liv Morgan. It has to be Liv Morgan or bust, blah, blah, blah. At this point, all my money is on Lacey Evans. I completely forgot about Lacey even being in the matchup. I don't know if when we spoke yesterday, or on Thursday rather, that they had announced Lacey Evans for a qualifier. At that point, I don't think they did. They didn't announce that until like later on Thursday. I completely forgot about Lacey because she's never on the fucking show because they've switched their shows like 10 times. But at this point, after seeing this match, she's the first woman to qualify for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. I would have to assume she's going to win the whole thing. And not only will she win the whole thing, she'll probably cash in and become champion, which is fine. I like Lacey. If they're going to go forward with her as a baby, I mean, they'll probably have her cash in opportunistically and turn her heel from there, which is also dumb. But listen, she's never been champion on the main roster. And if they want to make a feud out of her and Ronda Rousey, I guess, not exactly a feud I'm dying to see, but it would be something different. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not exactly against the idea. I do think Liv deserves it more. People would be more receptive to Liv Morgan winning the briefcase than Lacey. But it would be a good story to tell if they keep her babyface, so we'll see. Speaking of Ronda Rousey, she was on the show with fucking terrible looking makeup. Holy shit. I don't know who does Ronda's makeup, if she does it herself. I think she may. I don't know. But it just never looks good. Specifically on this show, it sucked. Not that sort of stuff even really matters, but just thought that was worth noting. But she was out there cutting a promo, and it was certainly a promo. It was not good. Shotzi interrupted, leading to an impromptu championship contenders match, as the commentators called it. Ronda Rousey wins, and that was it. It was a match. I like Shotzi. It was an improvement over their original encounter about a month ago in the Beat the Clock Challenge, where Ronda beat her in like 90 fucking seconds. So the fact that that was 90 seconds, this went like 7.5 minutes, was a little weird. This was way more competitive. Made Shotzi look all right, and I like Shotzi a lot, as I said, and I'm happy she's getting way more television time now, but turning her heel was like the dumbest thing they could have done. All of her heat was in being a babyface. That's where all her momentum was, and she's just a natural babyface. She's not a natural heel. She's not a great talker. She's good in the ring, but her biggest strength was connecting with the crowd, and they took that away from her when they turned her heel. The whole tank thing, dumb. The match was fine. Ronda wins, and Natalya attacks Ronda afterward because it was announced that Natalya will be getting her shot at the SmackDown Women's Championship at Money in the Bank in a few weeks, in early July. So they're not doing that. They're doing that at the pay-per-view, but they're doing Roman Reigns against Riddle, spoiler alert, next week on SmackDown. I don't know why. We'll get to that later. But yeah, this was fine, and they're teasing, oh, Ronda's beat up, she's injured, she might not be able to make it to Money in the Bank, which obviously she will. I mean, maybe she won't. Then again, they took her off of the advertising for Money in the Bank. Remember, when they moved the pay-per-view from Allegiant Stadium to MGM, to the smaller MGM Arena, they took Ronda Rousey and Roman Reigns off the poster. Roman Reigns is defending the championship, was supposed to reportedly against Riddle at Money in the Bank, but now they're advertising it for next week. Unless it ends in a no contest or it doesn't actually happen, which would be very typical of WWE, it sounds like they're doing it next week because they're not going to put Roman on the pay-per-view, which again makes no fucking sense. Ronda was also taken off the poster. So it's possible they either wait longer to do Ronda versus Natalya, which I would rather they don't. I really don't care to see that feud at all. Or it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if Ronda's injured now in storyline to do it like before the pay-per-view, but I guess we'll see what they have in mind. We had Gunther defeating Ricochet to win the Intercontinental Championship. Very fun match while it lasted, as I expected. Ricochet doing Ricochet things here. That's really when he's at his best. Had a lot of fun offense here. He sold greatly for Gunther's offense. I thought they worked really well together, again, as expected. And Gunther, in the end, becoming the new Intercontinental Champion, as he should have. Very fun match, as I mentioned, with the right outcome. That championship means next to nothing right now, and as other people have alluded to, and as I'm sure I've mentioned before here in these reviews, the Intercontinental Championship has not been defended on pay-per-view since WrestleMania. Not 38, but rather 37, when Apollo Crews beat Big E in like fucking 5 minutes to win the title. That was well over a year ago. We're talking here now in June 2022, and the championship has not been defended on pay-per-view since then. And they've had a lot of pay-per-views, a lot of opportunities to defend it on the show, on a show, and they just haven't done it. Now, Ricochet's reign was pretty much what I thought it would be. People got really excited talking about, oh, Ricochet. I mean, I was happy for Ricochet when he won the championship, but he's been booked like a loser. He's been, talking about, oh, I'm going to be this fighting, defending champion, all this other shit. And he's defended the championship a few times. He beat Sami Zayn to retain the title back in March, I think. He beat Jinder, he beat Shanky. Not exactly a lot of elite competition. So we're here now in June. Hasn't really done a lot with the title. He's barely on the show. The thing with Gunther is that reportedly per Fightful Select that WWE officials, specifically Vince, are very high on him. Now that might change next week. I know they changed his music a bunch. They've changed his name and all this other shit. But at the end of the day, they're pushing him. He's been protected. And in only his 4th or 5th match, he's the new champion. So, listen, the title at this point means nothing. And it's not exactly a sign of, oh, he has a really bright future ahead of him at this point. It's not the same as it would have been 5-10 years ago or 15 years ago or something as being the Intercontinental Champion. But it's a step in the right direction. It's better than him not being on the show. It's better than him losing his debut as many other NXT call-ups have had happen to them. And he's actually on the right track, and he's building momentum. So I thought this was the right call, and they got the right package with him and Ludwig, whatever you want to call him, the former Marcel Bartel from NXT. Fabian Eichner staying put in NXT as Giovanni Vinci or whatever the fuck his new name is, which is fine. But yeah, no, I'm in full favor of this. As long as they can continue to feature Gunther, Gunther, whatever, as the champion on the show, give him and Kaiser more mic time, and, just continue to protect them. I think this could work, and I think he's going to be in the right track to be a real, hopefully the bigger stars on the show, not just literally, but figuratively. Like, I think matches with him and Roman Reigns, Drew, Sheamus can all be a lot of fun. Much more than at this point, I love Ricochet, but he's just damaged goods. They've been booking him poorly for so long, it's just hard to care. Gunther is a fresh face, and so far so good with him, so I thought they booked him perfectly here in winning the championship, and we'll see what they do next with him as the champ. They'll probably do him and Ricochet in a rematch, but beyond that, like I said, him and Drew at some point, I think would be a killer fucking match. Maybe not for the championship, this title's kind of beneath Drew at this point, but, they could do him and Drew at some point. Him and Sheamus would be fucking awesome, I think. Him and Roman, although they're both heels, I think would be a lot of fun. That could be a really, really good match as well. I'm not even really sure who else is on that roster. The New Day? Like him and Kofi, I guess? I don't know. But yeah, just keep protecting Gunther. And again, this is another step in the right direction for him. So that was cool. From there, we had the main event. That started around 9 p.m. The main event started around 9:40 p.m. Eastern. They had Sami out to the ring by like 9:25. So it seemed like they were going to get a lot more time than they did. And they got an ample amount of time. But like I said earlier, they pulled that card where it was like, oh, Sami's out to the ring with a half an hour left in the show. Let's air more commercials. Let's air promos. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's kill more time. I hate when they do that. It's so annoying. But when they did the actual match, it was very entertaining. And it wasn't just an ordinary Riddle versus Sami Zayn match. Now remember, too, it was Zayn who actually cost Riddle the tag team titles last week when he played Roman's music. They were showing him backstage in the production truck, playing Roman's music, distracting Riddle, costing him the match. They brawled afterward. So having a match between those two was logical. But what I really liked about this was that they added stakes. They added stakes to this thing. And it was, Riddle, if he lost, he'd be barred from SmackDown. Because he is a Raw superstar. He's been on almost every SmackDown for 2 months now, really since right after WrestleMania, feuding with the Usos, feuding with the rest of the Bloodline and whatever. So he's been on SmackDown. If he lost here, he would have been off SmackDown for good, we were told. I guess even if he was drafted there, he couldn't be because he'd be barred from SmackDown forever. Their stipulations are very short-lived, more often than not, so I'm sure that wouldn't stick. If Riddle won, though, he would earn an opportunity to challenge Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship next week on SmackDown. Now, I don't even remember the last time we saw Roman Reigns on the show. We just had Hell in the Cell. He wasn't at Hell in the Cell. He won't be at Money in the Bank. He was at Backlash. Didn't defend the championship at Backlash, but he was there. I feel like the last time that... I don't remember. I think the last time we may have seen Roman on the show was when he cost RK Bro the tag team titles, which would have been... I think at this point 2 weeks ago. I think that might have been 3 weeks ago, actually. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was 3 weeks ago. Because they had Riddle and Nakamura show up last week. I don't even remember. I really don't even honestly remember. But it's been a while. He'll be back next week to defend the championship against Riddle following this win. The match itself between Riddle and Zayn was very good. They've had another match before on SmackDown a few weeks ago, about a month or so ago. This was equally entertaining. Sami is like by far one of the best parts of Raw or SmackDown right now. Him and Kevin Owens both. I still laugh about that segment they had on SmackDown, 2 weeks ago? That KO show segment, that was great. That was one of the better SmackDown segments all year. But this was really good, and I like the fact they had stakes, as I mentioned. And now we have an undisputed WWE Universal Championship match set for SmackDown next week. Now, as I asked on Twitter, why wouldn't they put this in Money in the Bank? I don't care if it's not in a stadium. That is a pay-per-view worthy match. It all started technically when I interviewed Riddle last summer and he shit on Roman Reigns and took shots at him in our interview, which picked up some steam online, which was pretty funny. Apparently getting Riddle heat backstage, which was hysterical, knowing I technically caused that by asking him about Roman Reigns in our interview. But, yeah, so we're getting Riddle and Roman next week. I don't know if Roman's busy on Money in the Bank weekend, if you'll be in Vegas at the slots instead. I don't know. It seems like I don't know if he doesn't want to work certain shows, or like if I'm WWE and he's working the Brock Lesnar treatment, it's like the reverse Brock. They'll have him on TV, but not on pay-per-view. If he was really Brock Lesnar, he would be on a majority of the pay-per-views. Say what you will about Brock, but when he came back at SummerSlam last year, he appeared at SummerSlam, he appeared at Crown Jewel, he wasn't at Survivor Series, but he was at the Royal Rumble, Day 1, Elimination Chamber, MSG House Show, almost every Raw and SmackDown, and at WrestleMania. So Roman Reigns, since WrestleMania, has had 0 televised title defenses. He will be defending it next week, but he's had 0 since Mania 2 months ago, has appeared at Backlash in a non-title match, and wasn't even at Hell in the Cell, and apparently won't be at Money in the Bank either. I mean, what's stopping them from taking him off of SummerSlam at this point? I mean, do they even really care? So, I don't know. I'm not really sure why that match wouldn't be on pay-per-view, but at least we're getting it at all, and it should be a great match. We have yet to see Riddle and Roman one-on-one, and based on their interaction in the 6-man tag team match at WrestleMania Backlash about a month ago, it should be a blast of a match, so I'm looking forward to that. Overall, a very good episode of SmackDown, as I mentioned. They took the less is more approach. Only 5 matches. They did Riddle and Zayn, Gunther and Ricochet, new Intercontinental Champion crowned there, Ronda and Shotzi, Lacey Evans and Xia Li, and Drew versus Sheamus. In every match, I mean, Rousey and Shotzi wasn't exactly a barn burner, but it featured the SmackDown Women's Champion in action, so it wasn't exactly random. But we got 2 qualifiers, only one ended in an actual winner being determined, but whatever. Lacey's in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Drew and Sheamus have unfinished business. Rousey beat Shotzi, cool. We got a new Intercontinental Champion in Gunther, and Riddle's the new number one contender, to the Undisputed Championship next week on SmackDown. So in addition to Roman versus Riddle, they also advertised Happy Corbin versus Madcap Moss again next week. The 4th match these two have had. One at WrestleMania Backlash, one on SmackDown last week, which ended quickly in a DQ win for Corbin. It was more of an angle than a match. And the match of the pay-per-view. Moss won the matches that mattered most on pay-per-view. And that last one was a no-holds-barred match. Why the fuck are they going back to this for a 4th time in what they're billing as a last laugh match? Like, do they think that's cute and clever and that people care about this sort of shit? Like, oh my god, move on. Moss gains nothing from beating Corbin for a 3rd time. Corbin, it would be even worse if Moss lost the blow-off match. Corbin winning that would be dumb. And the feud should be over. They clearly do not know what more to do with those men. It would actually make sense if it was a qualifier for the Money in the Bank ladder match, which it's not. I mean, Moss I don't think should win the briefcase, but he should probably be in the match if they're going to continue to build him up. But that's just me. So that was SmackDown in a nutshell. Like I said, very good show. Not holding my breath. This is the new standard for SmackDown. It was probably just an anomaly. It'll be back to being abysmal next week, but I'll take the good whenever we can get it. Thumbs up, 2 thumbs up rather, for the June 10th, 2022 edition of Friday Night SmackDown for this week. And a good week I picked to review SmackDown after missing it last week. But yeah, thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And be sure to keep an eye out for my Talking Smack review coming out, I think, tomorrow here on the channel, and other videos and interviews and stuff like that. My interview with Matt Cardona, the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, ahead of Always Ready tonight, live on Fight TV, went up on Thursday, so check that out when you get a chance as well. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.